was one of my favorite songs, I believe, when I was a little girl. Nice to know that that got in there underneath Is That All There Is, which was, my high school favorite song. So maybe the I believe part got set in there first, which is a good thing, and then everything else got added onto it. This is a story, of course, of Jesus' amazing journey and week. I'm going to share what you shared with me last week, Ed, about Pontius Pilate and the army coming into Jerusalem. I keep learning a little bit more about a story that I'm sure that if I read everything, but could you imagine reading everything? Every time I pick up Charles Fillmore's Metaphysical Bible Interpretation, which is this giant book like this is a little mini, The Revealing Word of his, which I think is great, but he has this great big metaphysical Bible interpretation. I just think, who would take on a project like that? Who would interpret all of this story in the metaphysical light and believe? And so I keep getting more and more of this story. And so the part that I didn't have before was a statement that Jesus is making by fulfilling the prophecy, which is in the Old Testament, of riding in on a donkey, which actually is saying to the world, I am the Son of God. I am the Messiah that was foretold. Now, what Ed shared with me, because at the other side of Jerusalem at the same time, Pontius Pilate, who is not normally a resident in the city, he's coming in and he's bringing his army in. And the reason he's coming in and the reason he's bringing his army in is because the Jewish people celebrating Passover had a reputation of getting rowdy and unmanageable, and so the army came in to manage them for their Passover meal. Carlos and Lily know about what happens when a crowd gets unmanageable, because some Sunday mornings I'll come in here and Saturday, the night before, will have been a party. The one that happened last night got a little out of hand, Lily shared with me, and they got a little physical. And she's upset this morning, and then, of course, there's all kinds of cleaning up to do. So if you look at the story of Jesus, he is aware that people, that the forces are coming in to manage the people, and he still goes in and makes a really big deal about his being there. I saw Carolyn Mace a couple of years ago, and she's written a number of really nice metaphysical books, and hearing her speak is particularly being able to go and be in her presence. But she said, we should fly under the radar because we're unique, and if we attract attention to ourselves, we're just going to create problems. Well, he did not fly under the radar, and if he had, things might have been different. And of course, there's this, did he project that experience by saying, that's going to happen to me? Or did he have a permanent, that's always, ever since I found my way into this way of thinking, one of my big questions is, did I make that happen by thinking about it before it happened? Or did I simply have insight that it was going to happen, and therefore I could see it before it unfolded or happened? Now, some people who really love and care about me a lot, like my children, always want me to think that I made it happen, particularly if it missed the mark. So if you hadn't thought that we wouldn't show up, well, then we wouldn't have known we didn't have to show up. What? Okay, so Jesus makes a really big announcement about his presence there. That's not a secret. He's not quiet. And this week unfolds with all kinds of moments that if we personalize the lesson, if we ask what could possibly be his story that means something to me, I think, and I'm not going to write the metaphysical Bible interpretation to stand up for what I think, but I think that he is talking about we have a sense of our purpose and what we have come to fulfill. I think that he was talking about no matter what our inequities are, we will rise above, and that life goes on, perhaps not in exactly the same fashion as it was before. Now, when he rolls away that stone and he comes out and his mother and the other Mary are there, he's unrecognizable. They don't recognize him. Now, I would think that that means that if you really have a transformation, you aren't the same person that you were before. I loved Michael Beckwith's comment, and he loves to do this, I think, every year. He does this thing about the rolling away of the stone. He said, you know, when Jesus was crucified and had had that horrible, horrible experience, and he's in the sepulcher, and he is covered with the cloth, the burial cloth, and he rises above that experience, he has a resurrection, and he moves away the stone, that he steps out of the sepulcher and he says, ta-da! Look what I did. Hey, is this not awesome? Look it, I rose above everything that happened. I'm not even the same person. Now, I don't know, and I was with Jean Houston years ago, and she had us do the cross. She had us bring up the inequity that is in our lives that really causes us to suffer. The thing that's the saddest story that we've told anybody, and maybe we've told it over and over and over again. She has us bring up that story, and then she says, and that's your cross, the cross that you've came to bear, and then she has you, march around the room as if you have this cross on your back. In Ventura, there is a man who walks around with a real wooden cross. This whole week, he is all over the place in Ventura. And really, I lived there for a number of years. When you see him and he's got his cross, I'm not called to do that, but I can stop for a moment in awe and wonder. A number of years ago, I went with my very, very favorite minister friend, Mark Vieira, to Fatima for Mother's Day. Now, my mother was a Catholic and my father was a Protestant. However, and I got baptized in the Catholic Church. However, that was the last I ever saw of the inside of a Catholic church. My parents very quickly decided divorce was the way for them, and so there were no more Catholic churches for me. So when I went to Fatima, there's all of these huge vats with fire inside of them. And you could go to somebody and have a wax thing made that would be your sacrifice. And so, there was a leg. So I'm like, Mark, what is the leg doing in there? And he says to me, well, somebody probably is wanting a healing. And they're sacrificing, so they've gone and they've paid money to have that wax leg made because they're open to having a healing in their leg. Or maybe they've lost their leg and they want it to be for a spiritual purpose, not to diminish them. And then there are these women that have strapped to their knees pillows with belts or bungee cords, and they're crawling on the ground. Mark, honey, what are they doing? Well, because Jesus suffered, they're suffering. They're suffering to show their love of Jesus. I'm like, thank you, God. That's not my tradition, and I'm not called to do those things. I'm not sure I'd be very good at any of that. Now, the stuff that I'm reading, the stuff that I'm really interested in right now is all the research about happiness. And my favorite thing that I've just gotten my hands on is something about being a freak. Let's see. This is The Freak Factor, and this is by David Bendel. The Freak Factor actually says that 60% of people in the United States, when asked if they would like to fix what's wrong with them, or they would like to focus on what they're really good at, or if they would like to do both, fix what's wrong with them and work on what they're really good at. 60% of the people say they want to do both. However, research is showing us today that none of us can fix what's wrong with us. Now, I love religious science because 31 years ago when I walked in the door, they said, there's nothing broken in you. I've spent the whole time I've been here working with that, trying to prove that that idea is wrong. There is a lot that's broken in me. Not too long ago, I went to lunch with a congregant who said, I finally figured out why people have left our church. And I said, oh, please do tell. She said, well, they come because they love your humanity and they leave because you're too human. I said, I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult. Anyway, this was published. He has a book. His book is actually The Freak Factor, Discovering Uniqueness by Flaunting Weakness. Discovering uniqueness by flaunting weakness. Now, in this teaching, we also teach that what brings you the greatest amount of joy, the flip side of that very same thing causes you the most amount of pain and discomfort. And that if you were going to eradicate or get rid of what you don't like about yourself, the really unfortunate thing was you would get rid of what's really great about you too. Because what brings you joy, happiness, empowerment, and fulfillment, when it doesn't work, causes you the greatest amount of pain. Now, David has a list of strengths and weaknesses, and we cannot get rid of our weaknesses. So if Jesus had been smart going into Jerusalem, he would have been quiet. But what if he was actually saying that he was a whole human being with good and bad in him, and that each of us, when we fully express who we are, will rise to a new level? So there's nothing wrong with you is chapter 3. Strengths and weaknesses. Here's a strength, and I'm going to say it's weakness. Creative people, their weakness is being unorganized. Organized people's weaknesses are being inflexible. Dedicated people's weaknesses are being stubborn. Flexible people's weaknesses are inconsistency. Enthusiastic people can be obnoxious. Calm people can be emotionless. That's me. My children think they want to throw a grenade at me every once in a while, and I've prayed so long to be calm and not get caught up in the stuff. Reflective people can be shy. I fall in that category as well. Adventurous people are irresponsible. I would say that. My daughter wanted me to jump out of an airplane. I said, no thanks. Too young for depends. Responsible people are boring. Positive people can be unrealistic. Realistic people can be negative. So I'm the positive person. Everybody says, you have rose-colored glasses on. Let me tell you how terrible it really is. Realistic people, I'm like, you're so negative. Go away from me. Assertive people can be intimidating. Humble people can be weak. Self-confident people can be arrogant. Patient people can be indecisive. Passionate people can be impatient. So, what if we really all were made perfect? What if we have areas inside of us that are challenging? Now, in this article, and he says you can send this article to all your friends, somebody send it to me, anybody who wants it, email me, and I will forward it to you. He says you can have it. You can't change it, but you can have it. And he does have a book that he has published. But he said, Walmart's commitment is to having the cheapest price. And what we all know about that is sometimes you get junk. Everything that I get for the kids, I have to take back. Everything I get for the kids. However, Target has a more stand behind your product, but they can't get the prices as low as Walmart. Kmart came on the field and said they were going to be everything to everybody, and guess what? We don't have any more Kmarts. Because you can't be everything to everybody. Half of the millionaires in the world today are dyslexic. Dyslexic children have huge can't do, can't perform, can't spell. I just have a grandchild right now that's facing this. We have in our family, whatever that is, that we don't see letters and words the right way. And so one of them is just being diagnosed. And I said, oh, for God's sakes, he flunks his spelling test. I'll show him how to hit the button on his iPhone and ask Siri to spell the word. Why would he have to learn spelling today? My daughter went to the school and they removed him from having spelling tests. That was the end of that. It's like, gee, that was easy. What if we're whole, perfect, and complete exactly the way that we are? What if focusing on our strengths allows us to take our attention off of our weaknesses? What if the spiritual journey is to embrace all of you? And what if the lesson that Jesus came to share is life is eternal? You are made in the image and likeness of the divine. And you will continue to evolve on whether you say it's good or not. Now, our set point, and if you go to, and I've just finished reading, the How of Happiness, which was written in 2007. It's considered to be the book that everybody should read if you're thinking about healing your life and living in peace. I have just finished it. It's great. However, she wrote a book in 2012, and it is The Myth of Happiness, and I'm about to start that. So I wouldn't advise reading The How of Happiness because so many things are changing so fast. The research is unbelievable right now in happiness, in meditation, in the benefits of coming into peace and being present with yourself, in letting go of your inequities, in practicing being happy. Manufactured happiness is better than happiness as a response. Happiness as a response requires good things to happen, requires that you get the car, and the part of our human body that can adjust to change is so well developed that if you make a list of all the reasons that you would need a new car and how that new car would make you happy, and if you worked at figuring out how to sell your old car and how to get yourself a new car, and all things came together for a greater good and you drove a new car, that new car would make you happier for 2 whole weeks. And on the 15th day, guess what? If you were tested for how happy you are, you would be just as happy as you were 2 weeks ago before when you didn't have the new car. We adjusted that quickly to change. That's a survival technique. However, it's also, if you think a new car is going to make you happy, the good news is it's not true. It's only going to change your happiness for a short period of time. As I shared last week, if you win the lottery, you actually, in the end of that experience, and used to be, if you won the lottery, it would be 2 years they thought you'd be happy. And then if you won the lottery, they thought you'd be happy for 1 year. And now the research has got that all the way down to you're good for 8 months and then you're mad. And the reason you're mad is because your regular life has diminished in the light of winning the lottery. And so you actually come out of that experience less happy. Now, if the very same thing that makes you happy makes you sad, what about being in the world in a way that says, everybody has weaknesses, everybody has shortcomings, nobody's good at everything. Everybody's good at some things and everybody struggles with something else. When I bump into somebody else's struggling, instead of being judgmental and critical because they don't have their stuff together and they're not doing it right, what about moving into love, acceptance, and forgiveness? The 4 cornerstones of this church are love, acceptance, forgiveness, and service. God loves us unconditionally. When we open ourselves and love as God loves, it's a lot closer to manufactured than it is to responsive. It's a lot closer to it's within me and I'm learning to cultivate it. The greatest kind of meditation that they're talking about today is not the one that has a mantra. It's not the one that's goaling to get what you want. It's not the one that's a guided meditation. It's the 10 minutes of sitting and watching your thoughts and telling yourself, I'm okay now. I'm okay now. I'm okay now. Because that has the ability to illuminate. So now what they're finding that the brain, that this light shifts to the left when meditators get in that state of unconditional love and compassion. What we believe in this teaching is that God is unconditional love and compassion, that God created each one of us out of itself. Therefore, 7.2 billion times make a whole God. However number of people there are here, together we are the one power, the one presence, the one God. And in each of us, just like a holograph, in the center of each of us, it's all already been given. It's ours to cultivate. It's ours to decide, am I going to be like Kmart and try to be everything to all people and really just miss the mark? Because, we get into a zone, the zone of doing something. It's called the flow, actually, when we are aligned with who we are, and when we go into doing whatever we do that brings us peace and love. I went to UC Irvine and I couldn't figure out what I was going to be when I graduated or what I wanted to graduate in. So I was an art major for a while. I'm a terrible artist. I was a general ed major for a while, and then something started to happen. There were these classes I took that I didn't have to study for. There were these classes that I sat and listened to the lecture, and I could just reproduce what that person said because it totally made sense to me. Those classes were psychology and philosophy classes. The more psychology and philosophy classes I took, the more A's I got. I didn't have to study. If I took a science class, I had to read that book 3 times, and still I was like, I'll write the answers in my hand. If I took a math class, it was like, I know these numbers make sense to someone somewhere, but I'm missing it altogether. If I took a history class, I was like, who cares what happened then? I can't even remember all those names. But if I took any kind of philosophy or psychology class, I could remember everything. That's being in the flow. Now, all of us have areas of our lives where we go into the flow, where you don't have to remind yourself to meditate, because that flow is an actual meditation. This guy says, forget what you're not good at. He says, if you procrastinate, he quotes Einstein. Einstein said, if a messy desk means a messy mind, what does an empty desk mean? He said, if you're messy, you're creative. If you procrastinate cleaning up your desk, stop doing it. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. You mean accept that I can? When I was a little kid, people called me Paula Perfect. And I first got to a place where I took over a job from somebody else, and they said, well, she was perfect, so she never got anything done. She couldn't decide what color to paint the inside of the building, so she didn't pick a color because that wouldn't be wrong. I said, oh my gosh, that's me. I didn't have a new sofa for 100 years because I was afraid I'd get it dirty. So I just didn't buy a sofa. I couldn't decide what color sofa. And when I bought a sofa, I bought a white one. I said, go at it, guys. Let's see how that works. Okay, so what if the spiritual journey, the lesson that Jesus taught in the Passion Week, is really to rise above your inequities in the idea? Part of me isn't perfect. Part of me doesn't know how to do anything or everything, and that part of me doesn't really want to. When I put before me my taxes, Tony, the way Tony talks about his taxes is a totally spiritual experience. And I look at that, I bought a purple Pendaflex folder because that was gonna make me feel a little bit better because it's the right color and everything. And I can actually hate a purple Pendaflex folder. I hate it. It's sitting right out there in front of everything. And every day I say to myself, it's getting closer. And that's as far as I get to that. Now, I know people that would help me if I would just ask. If I ask God to help me, God will help me. If I ask God to help me, God is going to help me by coming to me in ideas, because that's how God speaks to us, is through ideas. And when God speaks to us, our ideas sound just like our thoughts. However, when they're God thoughts, they come in infinite possibility, and they usually come in things that are scary because they're bigger than we think we can be. So Jesus walking through his experience, I think he might have said, you too can rise above anything and you won't be the same on the other side. I don't believe that he said I'm the only person that will have this experience. I believe that he was saying this was the worst thing that I could ever imagine. What's the worst thing that you can imagine? Ill health? Paraplegic? What's the worst thing that you could imagine? To live alone? To not be loved? To have your family be mad at you and not speak to you anymore. I did this in the How of Happiness. There's a bunch of personality tests, and they're looking for your happiness level. So if you love those kind of tests, that book's got them all over the place. And they're assigning your level of happiness, because they say that 40%, maybe 50%, is inherited. They say that maybe as much as 40% are things that have already happened to you. So I've been married, I've gotten an education, I've got 3 children, I can't change. Those are things that have happened to me. It says 12% you can change, and if you change that 12%, your entire life can be different, but you will work on it every single day. It won't be like you make a change and then it's done. I think when I first went to the gym and they said, oh, we're so glad you're here, and the only way that you're going to get better is to keep coming back, I stopped going back. I think 31 years ago, I heard Della Reese speak in the Huntington Beach Church of Religious Science 31 years ago, and I know that I was illumined with the idea that, oh my gosh, here's something that's going to make Paula perfect really perfect. It didn't do a thing about that. If it did anything, it might have grown my understanding to embrace myself when I miss the mark. The greatest expression of forgiveness is within yourself. The greatest place of acceptance is acceptance for yourself. The greatest understanding of being loved is truly to know that you are unconditionally loved. No one has earned God's love. There's nothing you could do to earn God's love. You are an expression of God. Loving yourself is the greatest amount of love that you will ever experience. So most of us, this guy tells a story of the addict who gets recovery, and when he gets recovery, he becomes addicted to everything else. Ultimately, he becomes addicted to, he starts racing for recovery, and he goes bankrupt in that experience because he's 100% got his attention on whatever it is that he likes that he's doing, but he's learning to work with himself. He's not wishing he was someone else. He's understanding that there's an aspect of himself that globs onto something and goes at it obsessively. And instead of saying I'm bad and wrong, what he's saying to himself is that's an aspect of me, and I need to learn to embrace all of me and to live in love and peace. I believe that when Jesus stepped out, I'm making an interesting noise. Thank you. I believe when Jesus stepped out onto the next level of his expression, that it didn't stop. There was more to do. So for any of us being uncomfortable living here in our body temples, I'm not sure it's going to stop. I have an idea that as we grow and evolve, we take ourselves with us every place that we go. And so the greatest invitation to each of us is to say at this holy special time of year, I'm going to step out of the cave that I keep myself in. I'm going to rise above the inequities that have happened to me in the past and accept that inequities may happen to me again. I'm going to call upon the strength and courage of God to do what's before me to do. And if it's to step out and rise up, then if I don't do it, I'm just creating a rift between me and my higher self, because it doesn't stop calling me home. God is calling you home. Love and compassion are calling you home. Whatever it is that you can't do or that you don't do well, accept that about yourself and find the things that you do well and the things that you do love to do and call them holy. Call it precious. Call it a revelation that allows me to be wholly who I am in the world, because I'm created out of the one. I'm an aspect of perfection. And together we make the whole, not all of us being exactly the same. Happy Easter, everyone. God bless you for choosing church. So we take this minute and turn within, opening our hearts and minds to the highest idea. God loves us unconditionally, not because of what we've done, but because we are here now, open-hearted, open-minded, and willing to say, yes, I'm a beloved child of the Most High. I go forth in this day sharing the light that I understand, and when I miss the mark, I simply notice that's something I'm not so good at. I wonder where I can be powerful. I wonder where I can be present. I wonder where it's easy for me to be in love with life. I wonder if doors open as I follow my love of life. I wonder if the flow is a place that allows greater good, greater wholeness, greater divinity to move in me and through me and to show me the way. I know that my human journey is precious, ordained by the love of God. I know that when I leave this part of the journey, that love of God will carry me forth to the next level of expression. I know that if gratitude, if humility, if being grateful and humble is truly enough, then I open my heart, giving thanks to the divine, knowing that without that power and presence, I am nothing. I have no life without the love and life of God. I surrender into the greater good and allow it to show me the way. And I go down that path with yes in my heart and God as my partner. And so it is. Amen. Live streaming ministry. If you would like to support this ministry, please click on the donate button that you find on the homepage. God bless you. Thank you for joining the Center for